Welcome to programme 12 of the current Subs Bench series, in which we talk to some of the former Bristol City and Bristol Rovers players who've entertained us over recent and past years. We also chat about some of the current goings-on. The man here to help me do just that is Richard Latham, joining me on the line once more, having missed last week. So you're looking reasonably okay, so reports of your demise were exaggerated then, Richard?
Yeah, all that's wrong this week is a little bit of a hangover from my wife's 60th birthday party yesterday, which went on rather a long time. Had good weather, so I had a lovely party in the garden and a lot of friends around. So a little bit teary-eyed and a little bit frog in the throat, but apart from that, all well.
Of course, you should never talk about a lazy's age, but never mind, you've put your foot in it there. So let's talk about what's going on before we hear from Howard Pritchard, former Bristol City favourite, 2 spells at the club, of course a Wembley winner as well, and from Peter Aitken, a very popular and loyal servant of Bristol Rovers over the years. So they're both coming up in a moment. But when we last spoke 2 weeks ago on the programme, we said that we hoped Bristol City would have appointed a new manager by the next programme. Then last week, when you didn't make it through illness, I said again, well, hopefully in a week's time. And of course, as we speak now, they still haven't made an appointment. So what's going on?
The same as it always goes on when Bristol City seek a new manager. In my experience over 40 years, they get rid of one manager not knowing who's going to be next. Several names that the fans would jump at are linked with the job. They don't take it, and then we get down to people that the fans wouldn't have considered. And at the moment, the new favourite is Danny Cowley, who was only sacked by Huddersfield yesterday as we speak. He comes with a brother, if you have him. His brother Nicky's been assistant everywhere he's gone. He's very successful at Lincoln City. Kept Huddersfield in the Championship, we consider that a success this year. But they come as a pair usually, and so what does that mean for Dean Holden and Jamie McAllister? What does it mean to the continuity of the stuff that Bristol City have been building up, I think, very sensibly over the last 4 years? And what does it do to the fans who were hoping for Chris Hughton or Stephen Gerrard? I always said to you that we wouldn't be them because I didn't think they'd accept the job under the terms Bristol City would want it. Bristol City like the managers to be part of a team. And the team includes the chairman, John Lansdowne, and the chief executive, Mark Ashton, and they like to work together. And a lot of managers who are old school, and I would include Chris Hughton in that because he's been a very experienced manager, like to be more independent than that. Now, I'm not saying the system City want to employ is wrong, but they will not get a manager, I don't think, of considerable experience working under those terms, or if they do, it'll be very fortunate. So you're much more likely, as I've said all along, to end up with a Ryan Lowe at Plymouth, unproven, but done well there. You know, Danny Cowley, his main success has been with Lincoln City, and very great success it was, let's be fair, and I think the two of them together have been very successful virtually everywhere they've gone. So he's got something to recommend him, as has Ryan Lowe. But you're still taking on a person who's never taken a team out of the Championship and never looked like doing that, to be honest. So I think the only thing that makes me laugh is I look at the fans who hounded Lee over social media, Lee Johnson, and wanted him out and told the club they had to get rid of him and all that. Would they have done that if they looked at the current betting and realised it's not going to be Chris Hughton probably and it's not going to be Stephen Gerrard? Why would Stephen Gerrard take it at Glasgow Rangers when he wants to manage Liverpool in the future? You know, why would he risk going to a club like Bristol City and maybe not doing that well because they do buy and sell players. So I never thought he was a serious considerer. I wanted Chris Hughton. I think he was the best and still remains the best of the people in the list. But now Danny Cowley is suddenly favourite, not odds-on favourite, has to be said. I only start to think it's going to be when someone's about 5-1 on to be the new manager. He's about 6-4. But then Chris Hughton's been shorter odds than that. Stephen Gerrard's been short odds, and now they're out to about 8 or 9-1. So the fact that there's been so many candidates, so many favourites already, just shows that people didn't know who's going to be next. And in that case, why do you sacrifice the stability that you've built up over 4 years? And I still maintain they've done it basically through pressure from social media.
Allowing me to be a little bit cynical, of course the bookmakers want the market to be buoyant, don't they? So Danny Cowley suddenly becoming available, why wouldn't they put him at the top and hope a few people put their money on him? Because the bookmakers are there to make money, aren't they?
Absolutely, that's a very fair point. How much have they taken on Chris Hughton? How much have they taken on Stephen Gerrard? How much have they taken on Ryan Lowe? Even right at the start, Tony Pulis was made favourite, for goodness sake. I mean, it was ridiculous. I could qualify that by saying Tony's a very, very good manager, but not for Bristol City, as was shown in the past. So you're absolutely right. The bookmakers do this to stir up more money. So you have to be careful. But They normally get it right in the end, and when you see someone about 3 or 4 to 1 on to get the job, that's when you've got to start considering he's always there.
Have we come to the point where somebody at Bristol City, maybe Stephen Lansdowne, needs to come out and just spell out what the ambitions of the club are? Because everyone says, they want to get in the Premier League, but what is the time scale again? Does it not need a bit of clarification?
I think that, if I remember rightly, there was clarification when Lee Johnson got the job, and they freely admitted that they wanted a manager who worked within certain parameters, and they wanted a manager who would work with other people. So as I understood it, like with the transfer deal, Lee would identify the player he wanted, and then it was basically over to Mark Ashton to find out whether it was financially possible. He basically did the negotiating, which in the old days the manager did it all, and then went to the board finally and said, look, we can get this bloke for 50,000, shall we buy him or not? Now that doesn't happen. You get the manager, identifies the player he wants. And it's not just Bristol City. A lot of clubs have gone down this road, including Tottenham famously, because Pochettino famously said in an interview when he was asked if he was going to sign this summer, he said, well, I'll let you know when they tell me. And that is how it is now in football. The business side is often conducted by someone else. And that's not a bad thing.
No.
But they made that quite clear when Lee got the job, and I imagine it's the same now.
But do the club not need to come out and say, we want to be in the Premier League in 12 months' time, or we're prepared to wait for 3 more years, 4 more years until we can get it right? Because the fans would not be too happy with that, would they?
But again, I've covered the club for 40 years, and I've seen both methods. I've seen a board come in and say, we're going to be in the FA Cup final in 5 years, we're going to be in Europe in 10 years, we're going to do this, and I'm putting in no money. So you look at that and say, well, why would you say that? And then I've known a manager, I think it was Tony Pulis, came in and said it'll take 3 years to get this club out of what is now League One into the Championship, because they've just been relegated. And he was absolutely pilloried by fans. Bristol City in League One, do you want 3 years? Well, it took 8 years. After Tony left, it took that long, 8 years to get him back in. But because he said, I want to do it in 3 years, everybody said, well, that's ridiculous, you should be doing it this season. And so, no, I don't think they should say a target to get in the Premier League. I think what I was looking for was gradual progress. And under Lee Johnson, I think we saw gradual progress, particularly as he was selling players, his best players. So had those players stayed, who knows what would have happened. But they didn't. The club decided to take 13 million, whatever it was, for Lloyd Kelly, 20 million for Adam Webster. And they were big money deals for Bristol City. Let's be fair. It's hard for a club like Bristol City to turn down that money. But I keep maintaining that until they stop those players going to the likes of Brighton and Bournemouth, not Arsenal and Manchester United and Liverpool and,
No.
But those sort of, what I would consider comparable clubs, although I know they've had 3 or 4 years in the Premier League now, so their finances have gone through the roof, comparatively. They all, over the years, have been comparable clubs to Bristol City, and I don't like to see Bristol City's best players going to Brighton. I honestly don't.
No. Okay. Well, enough of that, because it might all change in the next few hours. You never know, but I doubt it. Let's talk to some of our favourite players. Reminding Rovers fans that we've got Peter Aitken coming up shortly. But I suppose since we're on City, we'll carry on and talk to Howard Pritchard. Do you remember this interview? It was about 5 years ago, I think 6 years ago, at the Indoor Bowls Club down the road from Ashton Gate, and Howard came along. He looked a little older than his playing days, didn't he? But still had some...
They all look a bit older. We look a bit older than our prime days. I can tell you that. I think what I remember most about that day, didn't we bowl a ball right off the ring?
I knew you were going to say that. Yes, I did.
That was a prime moment. Howard was pretty good. He was okay. I held my own, I thought, but Howard's a lovely guy, a big friend of mine. When they played at Wembley in 1986, he was probably the player I was closest to, friendly. We used to go and play snooker and have a laugh and do different things. Lovely guy, very good player, first division player for City when he started. Big career to talk about. And we asked him how he came to Bristol City in the first place.
Yeah, I joined Bristol City in 75, 76, and I was there when they actually won promotion, which was a brilliant thing for a young lad to actually join a team that was in the first division.
That was as an apprentice, presumably?
That was as an apprentice, yeah. So I had Bristol City had 4 years in the top division, and my first game came about in the third season. Where I played against Aston Villa. That was my debut game.
And the following season, you played plenty of times.
Yeah, to be fair, I was playing with a team that was struggling really, because that was the season we actually went down. But I actually ended up getting 18 games in the first division.
Playing against some of the biggest clubs in the country, obviously. Who do you remember playing against? What players?
Yeah, I mean, there was some great players in the top division. Ian Rush, Mark Hughes. We had a couple of really good players ourselves. Tom Ritchie, Paul Cheesley, Jeff Merrick at the back.
Of course, Paul Cheesley's injury, you wouldn't have been in the team then, but a huge setback to City, wasn't it? Never really replaced him.
No, I mean, they didn't really recover actually after losing Paul. He was a great player, to be fair. Kicked with both feet, brilliant in the air. And it was a great loss to the club, really.
It's in the only second game, wasn't it, in the first division?
It was. They played at Arsenal, and he scored the winning goal, Paul. And he was a hell of a player because he was a big lad and good in the air. But as Howard said, he could score goals with both feet from long range, couldn't he? He was a hell of a prospect.
Yeah, that's right. And then obviously Kevin Babbitt started coming through. And he was an exceptional player. He actually scored a hat-trick against Manchester United away from home.
Absolutely.
So you must have played at some of all the great grounds then, did you?
Yeah, really, the combination, the second team, we actually played on the grounds anyway. So even though I had a limited amount of games for the first team, we actually still played on the grounds.
We had Bobby Gould on the programme last week, and he made a big thing about the lack of reserve team football now. How important was reserve team football to you coming through as a young Bristol City player? Well,
I mean, it was really important, I thought. Starting from the youth team, going into the reserves, and then obviously going up through into the first team. So basically, if you played on the wing, they actually used to sort of get the reserve winger to go into the first team, a lot of the time.
And you were telling me you played even against Glenn Hoddle in a reserve game.
Yeah, I mean, the number 7 was Glenn Hoddle, and I was actually playing against him, and I was on the other number 7.
Unbelievable.
And nowadays, not that they have reserve teams, but you shadow the guy you're going to replace gets. The guy you're going to replace gets injured, and they go and sign somebody else from another club. You never get the chance at all.
Yeah,
that's what happens to the big boys, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. The one thing that doesn't happen now is they haven't got that second team. So there's obviously verge players that are not actually getting enough games.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think that's something we definitely agree on. Let's move on to the later time in your career. And of course, you became a Welsh international later in your Bristol City time. Again, playing with the likes of Rush and Hughes, fantastic experience.
Yeah, my second spell obviously was with Terry Cooper. And I don't know whether you can remember when Terry played against Brazil, and that's where Gordon Banks had that fantastic save. So with Terry managing the team, it was just brilliant.
So you were the Jarzinho of Bristol City then, were you?
Well, I wouldn't have said that.
But they were great times under Terry, weren't they? Because the club had gone almost out of business in 1982. He'd rebuilt a team on very little money. And of course, the first thing that came, which you were involved in, was the promotion from the old 4th Division, which really started City back on the road upwards again.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, finances were pretty tight, really, with Swindon Town and Bristol City. Obviously, 8 players had to tear their contracts up. I was at Swindon at the time, and obviously when I come back to the city, it was brilliant that we actually got promoted. And then in my 3rd season there, we obviously won the Freight Rover Trophy.
Two pretty different teams, because it did evolve that team. But the 4th Division promotion team, likes of Trevor Morgan up front, Keith Curl, of course, was playing and went on to play at Wembley. What do you remember of that team?
Well, I mean, we've just sort of workman-like side, and don't forget, we had Moisey at the back. So, and he's gone on to brilliant achievements to be managing really top sides.
He was part of your 2 Wembley sides, of course, David, and a good centre-half. Did you rate him as a centre-half?
Yeah, it was a really good centre-half. Yeah,
so you've not had a call this week to be assistant manager at Real Sociedad then?
No.
He's done quite well since, hasn't he, really? It's been at Bristol City.
Well, he's done brilliant, yeah. I mean, it's funny that he's a great coach and I'm a coach driver.
So let's move on to Wembley then, 86, and you had the pleasure and the proud thing of scoring one of the goals for City that day against Bolton. 3-0 victory against Bolton. Glyn Riley put City ahead. Tell us about your goal.
Yeah, well, I think I actually made a ball into the channel to Stevie Neville over the top, and then he turned in and crossed it, and I was fortunate enough to be at the back post and just come in and wellied it in.
And I remember Glyn going over to you when you'd scored and pointing up to the electronic scoreboard where it had your name alongside his. Do you remember that?
Oh, it was brilliant. I mean, the actual support that we took to that game was absolutely fantastic. You know,
You saw your name in lights.
and same, yeah, naming lights. But I mean, the fans were absolutely tremendous on that day. They were brilliant.
Well, it was like almost a rebirth of Bristol City, wasn't it? After all the financial problems, that was a day of huge celebration, and you, in the end, you won pretty comfortably.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously 3-0, and it was just a great achievement for the club. And even then, when we went up into the third division, we only lost out by about, I think, 6 points, missing out on promotion again from the third to the second.
And what do you remember of Terry Cooper as manager? Astute financially, let's say. I know you've told me before that maybe there was a few promises made to you that weren't kept.
Well, that's right, and that's basically why I left from winning the Freight Rover. I then joined Gillingham. Obviously, the finances wasn't there. Or they were there, but he didn't want to give me anything.
Moved him on, I think is the term, isn't it?
But great fun to work for, I imagine, because it was great fun to work with as a journalist.
Yeah, I mean, he's a great manager, and he's, he a lot of achievements in the game.
Howard Pritchard there, paying tribute to Terry Cooper, who obviously took City to that Wembley win and a very successful time, which Richard enjoyed, and we all know that, so we won't talk too much more about that. So let's.
I'm all talked out about that one.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk Rovers now, and obviously their season is long gone, but approaching the new one, and they've appointed a new assistant manager in this past week. Seems that somebody that Ben Garner knows particularly well.
Jack Messier, I'm not sure how he pronounces his second name, but they work together at Crystal Palace. So someone Ben knows. It's very, very important when a manager goes to a new club that he gets the number 2 position right. It's so important to have someone that's loyal to you, that's not a threat to you. Over the years, I think the best partnerships, you can almost remember, it's like when Paul Trollope and Lenny Lawrence were at Rovers, Terry Cooper and Clive Middlemas at Bristol City. Hugely important to get the right number 2 position, and you want someone you know and trust. So it doesn't surprise me at all that Ben Garner's gone to someone who he knows and knows well from working at Crystal Palace. He's also worked with very good young players. He's been at Chelsea and working with some of their young players, I understand. So he's used to working with and developing young players, which is exactly what Rovers want. So on the face of it, I think that sounds like a good appointment.
Yeah, and of course they've also signed a player, Josh Grant, midfielder come defender, who was also on Chelsea's books, so brought up the right way, as we know from some of the Chelsea loanees who've been in with the 2 Bristol clubs over recent years. So again, that's youth. Of course, they will need experience as well, but clearly young players that the manager and assistant, know that they can nurture really as the season goes on.
Yeah, he's not the first that Rovers have picked up for ex-Chelsea youngsters or on loan, Chelsea youngsters on loan. My reservation about that is that academy football in Chelsea under-23 or under-21 football is totally different to League One football.
Yeah, but he has played at Plymouth last season on loan.
Yeah, that's very important. I was just going to say that he's had in a good Plymouth side that went on to win promotion. So he's had experience of it, and that's really good. And I like the fact that he's prepared to go on loan and get that experience, because a lot of them are quite happy to play academy football till they're 22, 23, 24, drive around in Ferraris, earn a lot of money, and never play a league game. And that's very sad, and it's one of the things that happens with our system at the moment. There are a lot of players fall into that category. Have hardly played a league game by the time they get to 23. So I like the fact that the ones that are prepared to drop into the lower division, I'd say Rovers have had some before. Some have worked out, some haven't worked out so well. But he's obviously got talent, and if he's part of a successful Plymouth team, that will as well.
Yeah, okay, so that's the future for Rovers. Let's delve into the past now, and certainly a totally different era when we talked to Peter Aitken, because we had a long chat with him, didn't we? And this is an abridged version we're going to play you now. But he had particular memories of one game against a particular icon of the 1960s, and that was Ron Yates, wasn't it, when he, the former Liverpool centre-half, and Peter told us how he came up against him in a game against Tranmere Rovers.
Yes, it was an exciting evening to play in the game, and promotion. The club were going for promotion, so there was a lot of tension about, a lot of pressure, and I got called in a game or two before. But the Tranmere game, there was a moment on the pitch where I found myself maybe 20 yards outside the 18-yard box, and a ball dropped out, and we were attacking at the time. And then there was a melee of players, and the ball dropped in the middle, so I made a dash to get to the ball, and then coming out of the melee of players was the enormous physique of Big Ron. And my life flashed before me for a quick second. I just thought, this looks like a 50-50 coming up, and I'm thinking, this is where I could die here. Anyway, I made the tackle, and we both went for it, and I think for the next 5 minutes, my body was just vibrating. It never stopped. And as I got back to the halfway line, Stuart Taylor looked at me and he said, "Are you all right?" And I went, "Not yet, no." But I thought, I'm still alive, and it sort of made me think that, well, if you can make that kind of tackle, and it was a fair tackle, there was nothing dirty about it, we both hit the ball, and he came through me with all his might and strength, and it was a bit of a knock, I have to say. No one's hit me like that, in the rest of my career. But it was for me, it was a sort of a defining moment as a young player, that you think, well, you have nothing to be scared of when it comes to tackling. If you go in and do it the right way, then if you can tackle Big Ron Yates, you can tackle anybody.
I suppose for our younger viewers, we ought to explain that Ron Yates was the man around whom the great Bill Shankly built the Liverpool dynasty, and it was in the days when hard men were hard, and he was granite, wasn't he? Really? Oh,
absolutely. I mean, there were a few Liverpool players then that they took no prisoners. They were ruthless defenders, and I mean, it's as it sort of followed on that Larry Lloyd, who played for Bristol Rovers and who was a big lad himself, Larry, and was a bit of a no nonsense kind of player. Liverpool strangely came in and bought Larry to cover Ron Yates. Now, no disrespect to Larry, he was a fine player, won European Cup medals and all, but if you put the two together, you'd have to say Larry is a nice man.
Brilliant.
Following game was Southend away, and that's when promotion was clinched. And again, you were playing that night. Pete, what do you remember of that and the celebrations?
Well, there was an air of tension about leading up to that game. And I was fortunate to be playing in it. I was thrilled to bits that I'd been picked and that I'd kept my place in the team. And we went off to Southend I think it was on the Thursday, and it was just a long drive across to Southend in those days. And everyone sort of kicking their heels because they want to play the game. But we had a bit of time on our hands, and then we had the Friday. I think we did a little bit Friday morning, not much. But it was just that long wait into the game, and sometimes when you're away, time is not so much your friend, if you know what I mean, because you want to be occupied, you want to take your mind off things, but all we had to do was sort of sit around and think about the game. And I have to say, come the end of the game, I think mighty relieved. Not so much me, because it was all a new experience to me. It was just getting in the team and playing was a wonderful thing. But for the lads who played all through the season, they could see that this was starting to ebb away a little bit. So the pressure and the tension was mounting on them far more than me, if you know what I mean. But we got across the line that night, and then the celebration started, and the lads said to the boss, to Don Megson, well, any chance we can have a few drinks tonight? He said, why not, tonight of all nights, and which was great. So everyone sort of got what they wanted to drink on the bus going back, and off we set for a good trip back, and a sing-song, thinking, well, we'll get back to Bristol, and I'm sure the lads will be thinking, well, we'll maybe pop out for a drink somewhere, catch a late one. And unfortunately, the bus broke down on the M4, and we got stuck in the services, and that really sort of killed the night, if you know what I mean. You can only drink so many cups of coffee in the services when you're there, and I think we strolled back into Bristol around about 7:30 on the Saturday morning, and everyone was looking sort of washed out.
So you broken down for what? 2, 3, 4 hours or something?
Oh, yes. Wow. Where I can't remember where the coach came from, but Greg, who was our coach driver, and a great man he was too, great driver, got us through lots of problems over the years, he he made the arrangements to get a coach out from somewhere. Where from, I don't know, but you know, they got us back. Anyway.
Someone dampened the celebrations.
It was.
You went into what's now the Championship, and you were an ever-present the following season, and you were up against some good sides, including Manchester United.
Well, there was one season in particular, and I have the programme somewhere in the house, but I remember looking back, I have to say, and I was amazed at what teams were in the Championship at that time. You know, we had Tottenham down, we had Man United down, we had West Brom, Sheffield Wednesday, Sheffield United. We had lots of big clubs, you know, Bolton's, and I remember looking at one season, I'm thinking, goodness me, how did we ever compete against these boys? You know, because they were big clubs and they're big traditions, and you know, we were seen as one of the small clubs in the Championship at the time, and always favourites to get relegated. So it was a little bit of pride for us that we thought, well, right, we'll try and show you, we'll try and stay up, and we stayed up sometimes by hook or by crook. But I think the key factor for us staying up for so long was actually, you know, there was a team spirit. We knew that, you know, we were never going to be top flight footballers, and you know, this was our moment in the Championship. And I think for us as individuals, it was, well, okay, let's not fail. You know, when we've had our day, we've had our day, but let's not fail. Let's not talk about relegation and being relegated. And we sort of, a lot of us went through that phase until we sort of, all of a sudden we all disappeared. It was then that the club, you know, unfortunately got relegated.
So let's talk about that team. We'll start at the front, and it was the smash and grab partnership of Alan Ward-Boys and Bruce Bannister. Yeah,
two different players, two different characters. Bruce, you know, was a very intelligent man, thinking man's footballer, always looking at how he can improve in training and tactics, and one thing, always wanted to talk about the game, you know, and great to be in a conversation with him when it came to, you know, what was our business, football basically. Alan, always on the bounce, always sort of laughing and happy, and you know, wanting to do things, and life was good for him in Bristol, there's no doubt about that. You know, he was banging in goals left, right and centre, and you could see it in him as soon as he walked in the room, you know, that yeah, everybody sort of hooked onto it, you know, this is going to be a good time for us, you know. And you know, they were certainly the point of the spear for us.
They complemented each other, of course, didn't they? Because Ward-Boys was the tall target man type, and Bruce was the bustling player alongside him.
Yeah, and I never thought of Alan as a tall target man, actually. Physically, he was probably one of the finest specimens I'd ever seen in a pair of shorts in a dressing room. You know, he was absolutely rock solid. And we were talking earlier on about Ron Yates. And Alan was, you know, he was so well built, and you could just see the energy and the strength coming off him. And that really was what Alan was about. Physically, he dominated players. Yet he tried to have a laugh, you know, Alan. He tried to enjoy it and get something out of it. You know, if you got on the wrong side of Alan, then, you know, it was very rare that Alan would lose it, you know, but if he did, then you didn't want to be on the end of it.
The thing about them was they made national headlines, didn't they? Everybody knew about smash and grab, so you know, it wasn't just like a Bristol thing. All around the country, people were aware of what a force they were.
Well, I suppose we have to put that down to the commercial department, because someone came up with that phrase of smash and grab. I've heard the story, I don't remember it at the moment. You know, and it was a great line, and it just took off. Fantastic publicity for the club, but it just shows you how things affect players, because you know that gave them the kind of publicity that Bristol Rovers players never had.
Peter Aitken there, talking about the halcyon days of smash and grab. They really were a fantastic striking partnership, weren't they?
Well, we were talking about partnerships with manager and assistant manager earlier, and just as important has always been to me the right strike partnerships, and not just the right one person up front. I've always liked the big man, fast man alongside him, you know, a little nippy striker or a goal poacher alongside a ball winner in the air. I mean, over the years, coaching has gone different ways, and Bristol City had some success with little strikers in the 80s, but not often. But you need your big target man, and you need some. And Ballboys and Bannister were just. Alan was brilliant in the air, and Bruce would score goals inside the box from everywhere. And they both found the back of the net plenty of times, but they were different types, and I think that's what you need, different types. They complemented each other, and that's why they were so good as a partnership.
Yeah, they certainly were. I wonder what players of that era would have thought about what's been going on this season, playing games in front of no crowds, FA Cup final on the 1st of August, just
one
crazy.
thing I would have said is that all this crying about playing 3 games a week, they played 3 games over a weekend at Easter.
Absolutely.
Friday, Saturday, Monday, and usually 2 against the same club, home and away. So they would play. I was talking to, who was I talking to about that just recently? Tom Ritchie, I think it was. And he said, we played the Nottingham Forest, I think he said, one Easter home and away, and then another fixture as well. So 3 and 4 days. So did they train any different? Were they any fitter? No. Are there more injuries or just as many injuries now? Yes. And yet there's all this fitness training and everything. So I think that they would all look a bit askance at that. And it's going to be still interesting to know just how much of a break there's going to be. Are they all going to claim they're really tired after this playing 3 times a week, if that's what they want to call it? So it'll be interesting to see, what the reaction is when all this finishes. And it's like a breath time and say, no, we're starting off again.
Yeah, and just to conclude, of course, since we last spoke, also it's been hinted that maybe crowds will be allowed back in to grounds come October. That, to me, if that's what's going to happen, and I'm not sure it necessarily will, that seems the most sensible time to start the new season. But I think they're going to probably start it sooner than that, aren't they?
Well, I think they want to try, but again, they've got to get the players' cooperation, the club's cooperation, and maybe the PFA or somebody will say, no, that's too much for our part. They need a break. They need to sort of sort themselves out. It's been a sort of very, very heavy end to one season. We need a little break. October crowds would be brilliant, and the sooner we get crowds back into football. I've been watching Bristol City at empty grounds, empty Ashton Gate, and it's not much fun.
The novelty is worn off, hasn't it now? Basically, even on the television. Yeah.
So no, I don't like it. Having said that, we've still got to consider the safety aspect, and things are changing all the time, and there might be a second wave of this virus and everything, and we don't know. So a light at the end of the tunnel to get crowds back in, and I think what it's made footballers realise is just how important the supporters are. When they've had to do without them and motivate themselves without an atmosphere. It isn't that easy, and watching isn't that easy. It's like watching a training game, and there haven't been many great matches, I don't think, and that's because the supporters are very much a big part of the environment. Yeah,
certainly is. Okay, well that'll do for this week. We'll be back in a week's time. So can I book you in for another appointment, Mr. Latham?
Look forward to it. Fitness allowing.
See you then. Cheers.